If you suddenly had the word of God as a weapon, would you use it? Welcome to Origins, where I go over the origins of your favorite superheroes and villains. Today our story is of Jesse Custer, the preacher. Jesse Custer starts our story by walking down the sidewalk of a small town that he is the preacher of. He eventually walks into the bar to the shock of the bartender and the patrons there, and he asks for a beer. He puts it to his lips to taste it, and he tells Leonard, the bartender, that the beer tastes good. You can almost taste it through all the water. Leonard doesn't know what to say, so he defends his beer, and Jesse smiles. Everyone knows you water down the beer, Leonard. He then turns back to the crowd. This town hasn't too many secrets, and the one that gets to hear them all? Me. Good old Jesse Custer, sitting in his church getting laughed at on Sundays, has all of the secrets. Like Harvey, a man that could feed all of Rwanda with the grants that he's getting for his farm. All above board, Reverend. Just like that movie that Kate shot in your barn, just her and a stallion. He then turns to two gentlemen playing pool. How about Pat and Terry Morrow, the two that raped a hitchhiker girl and their daddy paid the judge off? I'm so tired of you all showing up on Sundays to sing a few hymns and then act like goddamn savages for the rest of the week. The Morrow brothers crack a pool stick over Jesse's head, bringing him down to the ground, and Leonard walks over telling everyone to stop. Meanwhile, in heaven, three beings are looking through a broken hole in the structure trying to figure out what to do next. The thing that they were guarding just broke out of heaven. An angel came over holding another angel in his hands, headless, demanding to know where Genesis is. The half-breed that they were supposed to be guarding just came out of nowhere and took his brother's head off. He tells them that they better get Genesis back before he causes some problems on Earth, because right now, it's after a soul on Earth, and once it bonds with one, well, the result won't be good. Over on another part of Earth, Tulip pulls out a gun, and she walks over to a car, and she opens fire in the backseat, missing her target and blowing the jaw off one of the men in there with him. Her target can tell that that shot was meant for him, so he tells his men to get her, and she makes a break for it down the street. She comes across a truck with Cassidy sitting there and tells him to get out of his truck with a gun to his head. Cassidy doesn't care though, and he tells her to get in. He was bored anyway. Then the two of them drive off as a stray shot hits Cassidy in the head, and he smirks. While elsewhere in a graveyard, one of the beings from heaven that set Genesis free walks into a tomb, where he opens it up and a pistol raises up, shooting him through the eye socket, taking out the back of his head. He then asks why the Saint of Killers shot him, and the Saint replies with, "Force of habit, why have you awoken me?" So he explains an entity from heaven is loose on Earth, and they need the Saint to get rid of it. It could be the end of everything with it on the loose. So the Saint gets up, and he gets ready for his mission. Jesse Custer woke up the next morning in his own vomit on the steps of his church, with 3 hours until his sermon. The entire town arrived to see the crazy Reverend Custer. They wanted to see the crazy stuff that he would say in his sermon, but something of greater interest happened that day. Genesis broke through the front door, screaming, and it shot itself into Jesse's head. An explosion of colors formed around his mind, and his body became charged with the powers of heaven as he began to speak in tongues. Then he exploded, taking out the church and every person in that church. And in a brief second, you were able to see the being of Genesis that had possessed Jesse Custer. Off in the distance, Tulip and Cassidy saw a mushroom cloud forming, and they decided to go and see what that was. Tulip runs over and finds Jesse in the wreckage, and she loads him up in her truck with Cassidy since she does recognize him. Once they get to the outskirts of town, Jesse wakes up and he sees Tulip and he kisses her. Then he explains that he has a splitting headache. He has all of these thoughts about an angel and a demon procreating and setting the world on fire. And now it sounds as if the word of God is in his head. But at that moment the police arrive. When an entire church blows up and one man survives, they kind of track that down fast. They all point their guns at Jesse and they tell him not to move or they'll shoot. And he looks at them and his eyes glow red. Drop the guns, all of you, and let us go. Everyone puts down their guns, even the officers in the helicopter at a distance. Tulip doesn't know what to say. It's like the word of God was just spoken. They all load up in their truck and they drive away, just as the Saint of Killers arrives. It's going to be an interesting adventure for Jesse Custer. Preacher is an older book that is now getting its own new television series, and I felt it was time to hit that origin up. Jesse's powers are actually the word of God. He can say anything and people are forced to do it. Using this power, he goes on a journey to find God and make him answer to his creations and for his sins of tyranny. I'm Benny, the Comicstorian, and if you want more videos just like this one where I dramatically recap a story for you, then follow me on YouTube at Comicstorian. And don't forget about my Twitter at Comicstorian and Instagram at Comicstorian. I'll see you guys next time right here at the DC Fans channel or on my channel, Comicstorian.